Good evening. It's an honor to be here. So what is it that classical pianist Martha Argerich, Meryl Streep, and Rihanna, who need no introduction, and any of the other artists here up in front of you have in common? They've all publicly spoken that they struggle with stage fright, also known as performance anxiety. And it seems that this is a very pervasive issue among performers across genres. Every performer I've known deals with it, but almost none of them want to speak about it, and it's always bothered me. So a bit about myself before we get into performance anxiety. I am from Converse, Indiana, and I've been performing for about a decade now in one way or another. And I have dealt with stage fright the entire time. I've crashed and burned plenty of times. I've dealt with it in good ways, bad ways. I've heard a lot of bad advice. And when I came to the Belmont University College of Music and Performing Arts, I was very surprised that they're not talking about it here. And if they are talking about it here, it's because I won't shut up about it. So I decided to look at the music therapy literature to try and find a solution. And I found 3 studies I'm going to be showing you today that outline what music performance anxiety is, as well as a possible intervention to treat it. And I'll end with an interview with my private lesson teacher on some more practical, less clinical tips. But before we get to the solution, we have to outline what performance anxiety is. And in a meta-analysis published in the British Journal of Psychiatry, they found that professional classical musicians who were highly educated in their field, they'd been working in music for many years, they were 3 times more likely to seek psychotherapy for their anxiety compared to the normal workforce. And in a 2014 study published in Psychology of Music, a very good journal, they looked at 134 adolescent student musicians, and they were seeking to understand what is stage fright. And they found that you could easily understand it in 3 domains. The first was somatic and cognitive, that being feelings in the body and thoughts. And this can include tightness in the chest, shaky hands, dry mouth, all of which I have right now. And cognitively, thoughts that you're gonna forget the words, you're gonna drop your instrument, you're gonna mess up. The second domain was performance context. They found that these students were generally more nervous for solos than ensemble performances, which make a lot of sense. And the third domain was performance evaluation. The more nervous they were, the worse they did, which also isn't very surprising. So what both of these studies are kind of telling us is this is an issue that musicians between adolescents and experienced professionals, they're all dealing with it across genre, and it's a rather complex issue, which hints that maybe the solution isn't simple, which brings me to acceptance and commitment therapy, also known as ACT. ACT is a pre-existing therapy in the mental health field to try and treat anxiety disorders. And in a 2016 study also studied in Psychology of Music, it was a case study on a university student. They took ACT in context of music performance anxiety to see how they could use it to better treat it. They used the hexaflex model, which is way too complex for me to go into, and frankly, I don't understand it completely myself. But the goal of the ACT is not to overcome the nerves. They said, throw that out, it's impossible for the nerves to go away because they're going to come. But when it comes, the focus is to be more resilient and to be psychologically flexible when they do come. And it starts by noticing your body, what you're feeling, which is not what we want to do when we're on stage. And it also works by reframing things cognitively, mainly by understanding that nerves doesn't mean you're a bad musician. But the main takeaway from this is the nerves are never going to go away. You have to start to be more resilient. So I realized a lot of this is very clinical, straight from the music therapy literature, and I wanted to give you some practical tips because all of these tips, it's generally accepted, help with public speaking, so you should all listen. But I interviewed my private lesson teacher, Dr. Savannah Sokolnicki. She is also the director of the Belmont Opera Theater, and she stressed the importance of being very prepared, knowing the music like the back of your hand, having everything memorized weeks in advance, so that when you perform, you're stressing about the things that matter, not things like this that can be preventable. She also said that anytime that she performs, she goes to bed early, she eats the right meals, she wears her lucky socks, she does everything so that she feels ready. But the main thing that she tells me in most of my lessons is that you have to stop looking at these nerves like anxiety and nervousness and reframe them as excitement to perform and to share what you've been working on for 3 months. And I think that's the underlying theme that I'm seeing is, if you can work to get the nerves to work for you instead of against you, that is the way past performance anxiety or stage fright. And I can wrap it all up from a story that my dad told me. It's some advice he gave me when I was first beginning to perform, and I was very nervous. I didn't know what to do. And he said, "Son, I know you're nervous. I know you have butterflies in your stomach, but the butterflies are not going to go away. You have to teach them to fly in formation." And I think that's everything you need to know. So thank you all for your time.